Welcome to Casual Watch Talk, the podcast from the Casual Watch Reviewer YouTube channel. Join us as we talk everything watches, from watch collecting, the latest horology news and interviews. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe on your favourite podcast app. Let's dive into the show. This week in watches, Fears goes platinum, Star Wars fans can now wear the Death Star on their wrist, Hodinkee have breaking news from 1970, Kith watch sells out in 1 second and ends up on eBay in 2 seconds, and we look at a Hodinkee story from a few years ago about the 7 myths of dive watches and what we need to stop repeating. And Kris will also be talking about F1 teams and what they're wearing this season. So how have you been, Kris?
Pretty good. It's warm out today. Warm out this weekend. We've had interesting weather coming out of March. So,
well, have you had a watch obsession this week?
My watch obsession this week was just started watching Drive to Survive season 3.
Oh.
About F1. A couple episodes in it. Won't spoil anything. Got a couple episodes into it, and was thinking back on a podcast we did a while ago, and certainly want to touch about it. Thinking about all the teams that changed and all the sponsors that changed, and I was worried about my favorite Bell and Ross for a little bit, but found out where they changed and where they're going. So we'll definitely talk about that today.
Well, my watch obsession has been, I finally got that vintage Casio, my childhood dream from my 14-year-old me who thought he could conquer the world with this Casio Pro Trek, the PRT40.
Right.
It finally arrived.
That's great.
It appears to be working. I'm not sure how I would measure the barometer, altimeter, and compass.
Calculate it.
Any accuracy.
Right. Yeah. We're gonna need a pressure vessel. You're gonna have to go to some what's the brass markers that get like driven into true north? Something like that. So you can set it to compass direction. You probably do a pretty good job checking it with your phone.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Well, what I thought I would do is, instead of just straight reviewing it, I might buy a modern one, because I think there's an equivalent one that's maybe around the $50 mark. So I thought about buying an equivalent one and then comparing them together, because I suspect like not a lot has changed.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested, because some of those sensors, I mean, you saw like it goes off the edge, it like needs a bunch of space for something. Those sensors just got shrunk a lot. So I think they might be some different technology there, but I mean the miniaturization is just absolutely amazing. But yeah, it'd be interesting side-by-side test to see, after 20 something years now, like what if the barometer is set, pressure and compass, etc. Cool.
Awesome. Well, shall we kick it off with This Week in Watches? And we are kicking it off with a friend to the show. He's been on the podcast before, and that is Nicholas over at Fears Watches. Now, I couldn't mention this watch last week, but I'd had a sneak peek, but he has bought out a platinum version of his Brunswick watch. It's incredible. From the videos that I've seen and the images that he sent me, I also did a follow-up interview with him, which I'm hoping to post on the channel. But this thing it's insane. Have you seen it? That Watch Pro have done a great article on it.
Yeah, it looks amazing. It looks amazing, and the big takeaway, I think, is that price for a chunk of platinum. I mean, I feel like you take someone off the street and tell them that you have a $28,000 watch, they might gasp at that. But as far as precious metals, platinum, the price, that's an amazing price for such an amazing finished watch, well finished watch.
Yeah, he's retailing it for £28,000, sorry, and that is a lot of money. It sounds like a lot of money,
right?
But I've held a platinum Rolex presidential model, also AP Royal Oaks and things like that. When you hold those watches, put in that kind of price bracket, still way out of my price range, but putting that price bracket into perspective, I think this is great value for money, because not only is he's not making these limited edition, but he can only make 4 or so, between 4 and 6 a year, because he has a jeweler hand making each of the cases out of platinum. So it's one expert craftsman, and he sent me some video of this jeweler working on the case. It's incredible. Everything about this watch is he's tried to do and get the best materials he possibly can. The hands on this watch, Kris, I don't know if you knew this, but on his stainless steel, he used to laser cut or CNC cut them.
Okay.
But platinum apparently warps when you do that.
Right.
So he found a company that uses a water jet, and that's how they make the hands. They etch the hands with a water jet.
Oh, geez. And then, and then boil off all the water and collect all of the sediment from that, because it's worth thousands of dollars of all of the platinum that is eroded away. I cannot even imagine the process. That's amazing.
Watch Pro have done a great article on it. I'm about to release a video interview that I did with Nicholas all about the watch, and Scottish Watches, of course, did the big announcement on the day.
Cool.
Yeah, so really glad to see that he's gone up market. I'm still holding out a hope that he'll recreate one of the vintage Fears divers.
Right.
I would love, but it's one of the oldest British watch companies. So
it's definitely reestablishing it. I mean, he's certainly he's got some pieces out there that he's doing. I think he's doing it right. He's reestablishing that brand and and building it up. Platinum. How big is that case on that? Did they say?
It's the same shape as far as I'm aware of his current one. It's just made in platinum, so it's it's a lot heavier, but not overly heavy. Have you ever held a platinum watch? It's almost unnatural how heavy it is.
I can imagine. I mean, just even platinum wedding rings. I mean, my wife has a tiny little platinum wedding ring, and it's like, whoa, that shouldn't weigh that much. So I'm sure it's at least gives you the impression. I mean, for some of this stuff, especially precious metal, like it definitely will give you the personal impression that you're putting that amount of money on your wrist. Kind of gives you that weight and feel, unlike maybe, let's say, an Omega Titanium or some other expensive metal.
Well, next story. I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, Kris.
A little bit.
Did you like the original Star Wars? Well,
yep.
Are you a Star Wars fan that has $150,000 burning a hole in your pocket?
Well, not this weekend. No,
not this weekend. Well, for any Star Wars fans that have $150,000 burning a hole in their pocket, you can get a, of course, limited edition Death Star inspired watch. This thing is insane. So it's a tourbillon, and as you can see in the center here, we've got the Death Star, and there's
as the tourbillon cage.
Yes.
Wow.
And they've got if you click on it here, you can.
It's on sale.
Oh, it's not only is it on sale, but you can buy it online as well. So if you just should we click it?
One house in Middle America, please.
So apparently it's using Kyber crystals in there, which is a fictitious Star Wars thing, but it's a prop from the film from Red One, cool. I think. Rogue One.
Right.
So if you've got that amount of money burning a hole in your pocket.
Yeah, and if you're a super nerdy Star Wars fan that has that amount, the case.
Yeah, the case is awesome.
Holy crap. I just want the case. That's amazing.
For anyone that's listening to this on the audio, the case, it looks like a prop from Star Wars. Or Aliens or something.
Yeah, it looks right. It looks like an emergency container that you smuggled into the back room of the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's cool. That's cool.
And this Cross Studios that have developed this watch, apparently they're a very new Swiss manufacturer, watch designer. They were only founded last year by a couple of entrepreneurs that thought they could take on the world, and maybe they will with this watch.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe. That's cool.
So the next story is about the Kith watch that I talked about on last week's show. So this is a limited edition G-Shock sold by a fashion brand in New York called Kith. I think they're similar to Supreme, where they drop t-shirts and things like that on Monday. So I thought I'll give this a go because they were around the $400 mark, it's outrageous for this G-Shock. I mean, you can get a metal version of this one for less than $200, but it looked pretty cool. My wife liked the look of it as well, and I thought, well, I'll just see if this is similar to Hodinkee, where it sells out almost straight away.
Okay. Yeah.
It dropped at 11 a.m. East Coast. I was on there at 11 a.m. I had it up on my phone. I had it in the browser. I hit refresh at 11, added it to the cart.
Nice.
Immediately went through to hit the PayPal button. By the time that I'd done that, it was sold out. It had to be less than 2 seconds. Honestly, it had to be less than 2 seconds. I did it that quick.
The whoosh.
And,
the whooshing sound.
And I don't know whether... I'm not sure whether they were also selling them. I think they also sell them in the store. I'm guessing because immediate, and I mean seconds later, they were on eBay, and not just like the Hodinkee BS where people just put the stock picture on there and they're like, I bought this watch for, I've got this watch on the way, and then it comes, it's coming straight to you.
Right. The listing was like ready to go. They'd already like done all the work to get the listing.
And they had pictures of the watch.
Yeah.
They had a picture of the watch. So people must have been, I'm guessing, and people that are, clearly I'm not into fashion, but people who are into fashion and know the Kith brand, I'm guessing that like Supreme, you could queue up. I don't know how many of these watches they had. There isn't a number, but they essentially like sold out in a second. I don't even know if Hodinkee sells out that quick, honestly. I don't know how anybody could legitimately get one online.
With the last Hodinkee G-Shock, I had, if I remember correctly, I just happened to catch it. Like I happened to know when it was, and I just happened to be like, oh yeah, let me see if I, and it was like 20 minutes later, and I happened to log in and I watched it because I thought, I too was going to see like, whether they're going to do a queue or, how they were going to do it, or it was going to be like a certain number, that sort of thing. And it was a free for all, but you're totally right. I think I put one in the cart and I went to check out, and then I want to say maybe a good five minutes later, I still had the opportunity. And I was like, maybe I'll buy 4 of them and then do exactly what we hate, which is scalp them on eBay. Don't do that. And so
you were doing research for the the new show.
Exactly. Did I say 4? I meant 400. Anyway, no, and then like 5 minutes later, and I was like, and then I just hit refresh a bunch, and I want to say they were sold out in like 8 minutes. So I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Like one moment, like 60 seconds. Plus, I think, where they're located, like where their server's located. I mean, this is crazy IT admin stuff, but like if they're in New York and you're down in Florida, like the round trip. I mean, now, like if it sells out that fast, now the problem is the speed of light is the problem. So it's like, well, sorry, Sam, your order took 40 milliseconds instead of 20, so you don't get one. It's insane.
Fairness kind of goes out the window, doesn't it? Because I know that in the UK there's a summer festival called Glastonbury, and I think Comic-Con do this where you have to register and you can only get 1 or 2. But I think these, I'm guessing, it's total speculation on my part. I imagine Hodinkee says to Casio, "Hey, we're going to sell 20,000 of these watches. We want this price, and we're going to sell them for this." And all they care about is shifting them. Like they don't, it isn't an idea that a watch fan necessarily gets these watches. Conjecture on my part, but this is what it appears like. They don't care really who it goes to, because if they did, they would have you registering on a mailing list. They would say, register your interest. Oh, everyone only gets one, so we can spread them. And Hodinkee never do that. Kith obviously don't. I mean, I'm not that familiar with Kith, but
it feels like many times they have tried to fix the festival Ticketmaster problem. They over the years, like back in the 90s, like Pearl Jam tried to do a thing where they basically like got all their fans and they like boycotted it, and then they did it for free, whatever. But then like the money and the transaction, and then they were like, oh, this is hard. Like this is hard to like collect credit card information from every single person and process this many tickets and this such as that, and we had to print them like back in the day. So it just keeps going back around, and it just ends up where they're like, there's like either an investigation or a bunch of a concert that gets canceled and somebody couldn't get tickets for it, or there's scalpers, or there's new laws about scalpers. And like, no matter what happens, we've like going to concerts for 40 years, and no matter what happens, it just comes down to like, yeah, well, so they're going to go on sale, and 10,000 scalpers are going to buy them instantaneously. They're going to be sold out, and then the only seats left are going to be $300. And it's like, and you're like, can't we do something about this? Just like right to the bottom.
Like you say, there has to be a way, and also, I'm sure these venues offload tickets onto these. There's one called something in the UK.
Yeah.
That they were the grey market for tickets. So they were like, oh, well, we'll take some of the crap ones off you if you give us some of the decent ones. So it's kind of like I guess, sure, it's the same in the watch industry. I'm sure it's like, I'll take a couple of these, these odd dialed coloured watches, and we'll give you a little tickle on something better.
I think they could do better, but I also see at some point, if this wasn't a bestseller, or if you did it where, hey, you guys, we're only going to let it to super fans that are registered on our site, it's going to be like, and 3,500 people get them, but then no one else gets to buy them, that kind of thing. And then like, yeah, the super fans get them, but then you're not going to see them on eBay, and then they're not as popular. And then the people that would be buying 40 of them to flip them on eBay don't. And so then they don't sell them, race to the bottom.
So the next story is about Bremon, and give them definite props for this. I know in the past I've been a little bit, I've teased them a little bit, rolled them around a little bit, but they have just built a new watchmaking and manufacturing center. It looks like they are going to start making more of the smaller components that are become impossible to manufacture in the UK, and I'm guessing also the US, because all of that manufacturing was moved abroad many years ago. It looks like this mantra that they had about British watchmaking, they're putting their money where their mouth is. And I think this leads nicely into what you were going to talk about, because WatchPro did a great article, and they've tied it in with the fact that they're now the partner of Williams Racing F1 team, and that there's I don't know whether this is technically going to happen, but they've made a few statements that might allude to our shared engineering heritage. So I don't know whether they're going to actually work together, like they might be making F1 parts as well as watch parts, but I don't know what you think about that. This probably leads nicely into what you were gonna talk about, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's great. Good for them. I mean, we had mentioned certainly before, it's going to take, in order to bring that level of manufacturing back to a country, whether it's the United States or Britain, you're going to need a serious investment in the manufacturing, the parts and things. And a lot of the micro machine stuff may be similar in the stuff that you might need for F1, but certainly not that tiny. But so if they get into some of the different components, or should I say the different materials, if they could start doing carbon fiber, or different material stuff that they could maybe do. But yeah, interesting partnership, and certainly it feels like it lines up. It's not like Italian Ferrari or Alpha. It's definitely a UK, British, England based brand and team, and they want to tie into that heritage. So it lines up.
We're switching the format round of the show ever so slightly. If you've noticed, we're going to solely concentrate mostly on the news. So at this time, we're going to make a space for a sponsor segment, but as we haven't got one, Kris and I are going to be the sponsors for this show. So what we're going to do is we're going to encourage everyone to come on over to our Casual Watch Talk Facebook group. It's been really growing, hasn't it, Kris? It's turned into something that better than what I was expecting, really. There's a lot of really positive conversation that's been going on.
Yeah, and all over the map, which is great. We welcome everybody all over the map, and all over the map watch wise. There's just whether you're whether you definitely got some G-Shock and I mean some basic entry level stuff all the way up. So we're not going to be snobbing or snubbing anybody that's bringing anything to the table. We're gonna accept everyone, and it's really been good. Some really good discussions, and then obviously, like Sam said, it brings new ideas to the show. So if you see something, and we definitely talk about it, or if you get your hands on a new watch or see something interesting or cool, we definitely love to talk about it here on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, just hit us up on the email. Next story is, I thought this was a weird one. I know I've certainly talked about this on the channel before, but Hodinkee have done an article, and I like the fact that I know people love it when we tease Hodinkee, but they've actually done a great job of this article. And they've focused on Doxa and the fact that Doxa was in a film that not a lot of people have seen. And to be honest, I've only really watched the clip that had the Doxas in, but it was a Robert Redford film called 3 Days of the Condor. It's a spy thriller. But he had this Doxa on and a very nice bun strap. Have you seen this film, Kris?
I have not. I have definitely not.
I don't know where the timing came from, because it's not like this film it's not an anniversary of this film or anything, but they've put a vintage Doxa on a bun strap, and I think it looks pretty cool, actually. I've started really liking what Doxa are doing again. What's your feeling on dive watches? I mean, and this is possibly the most diviest of dive watches, or it's certainly right. the most utilitarian one that they still kind of make.
My take on dive watches has definitely changed. When I started out, I felt like, earlier watches when I was a kid, the G-Shocks, everything, they had to be waterproof, just from the stuff that because I was a dumb kid, and I just be like, let's go wash a car. Oops, or let's go stick our hand in a fish tank. Oops, just like I probably ruined like 15 watches when I was a kid. Just whether it was from hard wearing. So that stuck with me, and that hard worn G-Shock that I had, and then any sort of future watch had to satisfy that. That was the first thing, was has to be if I'm getting a mechanical watch, it's got to be waterproof. And so I think when you first get into sort of into the hobby of mechanical watches, you worry about, you kind of panic, because I think there's a bunch of information out there that's oh goodness, don't even get it's only 50 meters. What? Geez, don't even look at water. Don't even think about the word wet. And that's not really the case. And as I've kind of come into this hobby, I'm definitely a little less drawn to it for the style. But I love the I had a Seiko Turtle. Love that design. I like that more than the SKX. It's kind of a unique, different case shape, cushion case shape, different, but definitely I would say nowadays, okay, it's 100 meters water resistant, and it doesn't have a screw down crown. It's okay, it'll be okay.
I totally agree with you. I think that the Turtle is more iconic than the SKX. I'm sure we're going to get some comments in the comment section down below. I'm not sure why the SKX has become so iconic, where I think that the Turtle itself the case just feels nicer. It's a larger case, but it wears really well for a larger watch. I've just been reviewing a Phoebus watch, and for some reason they've got the cases spot on as well. They're larger watches, but the cases wear well. Yeah,
never and now again, if you told me, hey, do you want to pick up a 44 mil diver? I'd be like, oof.
Yeah.
Oh, shiz. That's a big one. And I mean, it's not really, and I think the way it wears, and, certainly the style of it certainly doesn't wear that big, but.
Okay. Well, we teased it at the start, but you've been really getting back into F1. And I know a few people on the Facebook group as well. Shout out to TJ. I know he's a big F1 fan. F1's very British, and I've just never, I like the romance of F1, but I've never really sat down and regularly watched an F1 race. I watched the big ones, but
yeah, what's interesting is Drive to Survive on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, definitely start watching it. It not only sort of rekindled the interest, but I mean, even F1 is now like, wait, the first two seasons, like they didn't, the first season specifically, they didn't have the top teams. And then it isn't until like the second season that they were like, come
is this like a documentary then?
Yeah, it's kind of shot like that. It's shot like that where they just Netflix just throws a bunch of cameras in the paddock, and they obviously get the FIA footage of the race, and they kind of talk about the internal struggles and drama, and whether it's two drivers, whether it's the engine, or whether it's some technical problem that the team has, and they just get in there, and then they have these episodes after the season's over that kind of like brings it all out. But it definitely like digs into some of the intricacies and got a ton of people hooked. So I'd say, for after the first season, they were like, yeah, maybe we could talk to Mercedes. And then like second season, third season, it's like, come into Ferrari. We will let you take pictures of that, because I mean, those guys, they're super tight-lipped about, I mean, they're blurring out test photos. McLaren had a team photo that they took where they just photoshopped out the side of the arrow. They're just like, no, you don't get to see that. Like the team standing in front of the car, and they're just like, and they're like, yep, that's the team photo. And they're like, what's this black giant area in the back? They're like, we don't know. That's weird.
It's we did a story on this last year, didn't we? And I think I got an email from somebody who was complaining that we pronounced some of the team names incorrectly.
Oh,
so
I'm sure
hopefully
we did. Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to do a little disclaimer. I'm sure we're going to do that again. But
yeah,
in terms of last year versus this year and the watches that the teams are wearing, we just mentioned Bremont. Was there any that particularly stuck out to you? Or any surprises?
There's a couple surprises. We'll kind of go through them. And we'll start off with one of the ones that I was sort of concerned about, which was Renault has gone back to being an engine manufacturer. So there's no black and yellow Team Renault anymore. And if you're familiar with Bell and Ross, they were with them for, like, I want to say 5-6 more years. And that color scheme, that like carbon, black, yellow, they did a bunch of the skeletonized dial stuff and a very striking color scheme.
Oh, I saw the laughing skeleton skull watch.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, somebody demoed it to me the other day at the when I was getting my X33. Great piece of engineering. It's a total it's just an incredible feat of engineering for what you would think is a gimmick, but it's not at all when you see it in person.
It's definitely one of those that nothing that I would add to my collection, but at the same time they said, oh, we can do this, and it's kind of a cool piece. But I was curious as to what they were going to stick with. So that team basically switched to Alpine, which is they make one car. Alpine is a manufacturer, but it's Renault. They made a very famous
rally car. Yeah,
exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
The Alpine. Yeah.
So what I'm excited about is Bell and Ross has moved over to be their sponsor with them. And completely different color change. And so the colors actually remind me of the watch they did, the Racing Bird, that blue, white, orange.
Oh, for the air combo.
Racing. Yeah. That they made a not fictitious, but they made a they made a design like a racing plane, and if they had this racing plane that sort of inspired some designs, and then they made a couple watches sort of based on this. So now I'm sort of pumped because it's almost the same color scheme, and I think that's great. Very similar to that Christopher Ward chronograph, that with the blue dial, blue and white with like a pop of either red or orange. So yeah, pumped about that. But so that was a couple of team changes and a couple of other ones. But I mean, for the most part, Mercedes is sticking with IWC. Red Bull has got Tag Heuer.
Hoya.
Tag.
Yeah, tag.
Hoya. Tag Hoya.
Well, I mean, they're the ones
tag.
that are... I guess tag is probably the one that's most commonly associated with racing because tag themselves used to make parts for race cars, like Technologies d'Avant-Garde or something. I think tag is.
Yeah. So this is like super involved in, and every time, they've got the chronograph with the 12-hour bezel on it. That's that the team boss wears, and every time I see it on TV, I'm like, oh, that looks so good. And then I click on the link, and I'm like, oh, well, for $13,000 better, or whatever it is. I don't know. McLaren is sticking with Richard Mille.
Okay.
And Aston Martin. So, question for the group. Let me just take a quick look to make sure I'm not messing this up. Is it Gerard Perregaux?
Oh, yeah, Gerard Perregaux, yep.
Yeah, so they're new to Aston Martin. AlphaTauri, sticking with Edifice Casio.
Oh, yeah. Because Red Bull was Edifice for a while, wasn't it, back in the day?
Back in the day, yeah. And then their previous teams, the feeder team, the AlphaTauri team, Edifice Casio. So big news over in Ferrari is they have dropped Hublot.
Oh, wow. God, because
so,
they went all in with that Ferrari engine watch. I mean, it wasn't just a name on the dial, was it? No. I mean, they went all in.
Yeah. So big news there. So they've left Hublot and went over to Richard Mille. So Richard Mille, I think, makes up like 4 of the teams here. It's
such a weird bedfellows, isn't it? Because Richard Mille isn't. It's known for its over the top flamboyant design. With, I mean, you could argue Hublot as well, but you can't use it as like a racing timer. Like you can't really use it as like an F1 chronograph. It's
an interesting. I mean, like I don't know. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I mean, those watches, I mean, I'm not sure their market has to, I mean, that has to be their marketing has to be right there. Like jet setters who take the yacht and have it shipped to, Italy or the, Mediterranean or whatever, and then just like, and they fly in on a jet. I mean, that sort of thing. But like, as far as like obtainable, I mean, I just don't, it's not like, we're going to pick up one of the pieces,
It's just, I guess it's the one that's obviously just the racing team is an advert for the watch. It's not like there's a cheeky little nod like, our race drivers could really use this watch to time. This is a precision instrument that a race driver would need. There's none of that romance. This is just like, we're just
not even close.
Yeah, this is just a blatant advert for
it's it's definitely. I think that's like I think it's a good, like an indication of like a separation of like a fashion brand versus a, Omega with the Olympics. Well, like, yes, they maybe didn't actually make the laser timing equipment but I mean, they're a timing company. Okay, fine. You can kind of tie it together. But like, as far as this, you just, and then for me, I was thinking about like, if I had one of these, like if I had a Richard Mille and dropped down to a Cars and Coffee, like, I kind of feel like no one would notice. I feel like it'd just be like,
well, but people would notice, but just because of how they look, not necessarily knowing who it was. Like,
they'd be like, what's that? What is that thing? Like, it's worth more than what I drove here in.
Well, that was really awesome. We should bring this home, coming to the end of the news, but we've got a great article. I'm going to get Chris's opinion on these. Now, these are totally just our own opinions because neither of us, as far as I'm aware, are professional divers or even, I don't know, I think I've been recreational diving maybe twice in my life. So if anybody's, if anyone's an actual diver or recreational diver, I know Kris is over on the Facebook group, but Hodinkee basically did an article about 7 myths about dive watches that we should all stop repeating, and they explain them well. And I've definitely repeated some of these, I'm sure.
Oh, okay, let's see.
So the first one is that the first myth, I'll get your opinion on this, is that the rotating bezel on a watch is not to time how much oxygen you have left.
Okay.
So this,
Is it, my guess is, and I just throw this out there, you read the article, is it to time your ascent?
No, it's just to time. It's just literally to time. So
okay. So you're like,
dive.
You have 15 minutes. Okay, time a dive.
Yeah,
whatever.
because apparently it's... Well, first of all, they get a bit snobbish and say, well, it's not actually oxygen, it's a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. So it's
this kind of, they just go all the way.
It's this type of article. Yeah. So it's this.
Sorry, helium escape valve, sorry.
Well, hey, don't jump ahead. We're going to get to the helium escape valve. We're going to get to there. So they said, no, it's just literally just to time how long your dive has been. They said you could loosely... work out how much oxygen you've got left, but there's other variables, and then they made a comment about how, well, you would need a depth gauge to work out the depth versus thing. But I mean, they were sort of saying it as if no watch has got a depth gauge on it, but I know certainly Citizen watches have depth gauge on them, even the Casio Frogman. So they must mean something else. But anyway, that was the first myth. The next myth was that orange or bright coloured dials are easier to see underwater, which I believed was true.
Said that.
Yeah, absolutely. But they say, so they're, I'll just read what they say. They say bright dial colours have become a bit of a calling card for dive watches, and we can trace that back right to the 1967. Doxa is a legendary, decided a variety of colours for deep, better visibility underwater. It says water absorbs the colour of light spectrum one at a time as a diver descends. Red tends to disappear first at 15 metres, followed by orange and so on. These colours simply turn into a dull grey unless they are fluorescent, in which case they glow to all depths. It turns out that colours that stay visible the longest underwater are yellow and blue, but this is all a moot point because legibility of dive watches really has nothing to do with the dial colour, but rather the amount of contrast between the hands and the dial. Okay. So arguably, I mean, I guess they're arguing that maybe a fully loomed dial with black indices or something on it would be the best. Yeah.
I've heard the orange myth, and I have definitely heard the contrast as well. As much of the contrast, but I feel like a lot of weight is put into maybe the color of the hands and the color of the different, the orange. I mean, the orange hand that what we've talked about.
Yeah, it's funny. The next myth as well is that for our audio listeners, I've given away the ghost here on the video, but that vented watch straps help your wrist breathe. Now, this is definitely an ISOFrame talking point, and I have definitely repeated this based on ISOFrame marketing, and I think this is right. When you're wearing rubber watch straps, normally it's better to have more holes in it, but they're saying that actually that's not the case. It's just that it says here water pressure exerts a force equivalent to entire weight of an atmosphere above us for every 10 meters the diver descends. This effect is squeezing anything compressible in that way from eardrums to soda cans. Thus, a neoprene wetsuit sleeve slowly gets compressed against the diver's arm as they go deeper. A conventional watch strap, such as a NATO or flat rubber, will simply then get looser and looser, causing the watch head to flop. So what they're saying is it's more useful to have one of those watches that has the... like you get on a Citizen watch that has that sort of zigzag in it.
Yeah. But I feel like the zigzag, I feel like they're so stiff that you're just you would have to crank that on your wrist, or you know what I mean? You'd have to crank that on your wrist before it started to actually give way. Interesting, but yeah, I feel like I can see what they're saying. I certainly feel like the style, it kind of came this is a dive watch style, the zigzag. So. Yeah,
and maybe that's why some of the the ISO frames are so thick, because they. And then here you go, your old favorite, the helium escape valve. So they say that helium release valves merely relieve an overpressure of helium inside a watch case that is most often experienced while working out of pressurized habitats. You can read Jackson, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, they're saying that the...
saturation diving, specifically. So if you went down from a ship in a diving bell after being pressurized with heliox, Now we're ready to talk about helium escape valves.
Yeah, and then of course we've got the old favorite here. 100 meters of water resistance is not enough for a diving.
That's classic.
Yeah, it says overkill is a good thing when it comes to gear that gets used in harsh environments, but let's consider the numbers. PADI, the largest professional diving instructor organization, states that 60 feet or about 20 meters is the depth to which basic open water certification card holders should dive.
Yeah. And I think it's, doesn't recreational diving stop at like 60 meters? I think that's it. Something like, or 100, they kind of say it here, like, or 40 meters, that sort of thing. But like, I feel like you at 60 meters, there's like you start to need special equipment. So you need either rebreather or you need a different mixture. And as a recreational diver, you're like they said, 20 meters.
Yeah, and if you're a diver and want to come on the show, then you are more than welcome to set us right. And this one, this is a throwaway. Like, they've got six decent ones, and then this is like the throwaway. This is for the audio listeners. It says flailing your arms underwater adds to the water pressure on your wrist. I've never heard that before.
No, I mean I have heard it. It goes along with the showering with your watch. And we've talked about this before, like as if the water traveling 32 feet per second somehow gets more pressure when it hits your watch. That could somehow blow the seals because that the water and you're like, no, it doesn't. No, geez, like we're talking hundreds of pounds of pressure here that the watch can withstand. And falling water is only adding a few, if any, pounds of water. And we're talking if it falls from a while. And it's not going to affect it. But yeah, or I've heard
Like,
swimming. If you were swimming with a watch, like you flail your arms around, I was like, that's some flailing.
I'd never heard this before. And then, of course, the final one on here, just check it's the final one, I'll edit this bit out, is one that I think everybody knows, that most divers don't wear dive watches, because today they wear diving computers because it has everything they need on it. So I thought, that's another little throwaway one. I think, I've spoke to a few recreational divers, and most of them are too scared of bashing their watches. Like I know a gentleman I used to work with, who had a tag, and I was like, oh, do you use your tag for that? It was the Aqua, I forget the tag one, the Aqua Racer or whatever, and he's like, no, I don't want to bash it on a rock.
Exactly.
It says I've got a depth gauge that's linked to the tank, so I know exactly how much I've got a watch that's linked to the tank, so I know exactly how much air I've got. So anyway, that was just a little bit of fun from Hodinkee there.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Well, that was your news roundup for this week. As always, we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks, guys. Bye.